Greetings, friend, and welcome. To the northwest of the increasing collection of star systems situated near the eastern fringe of the Milky Way that form the expansionist stellar empire of the Xenos Tau, approximately 3,000 light-years north of Ultramar in the Ultima Segmentum, there is an area of space avoided by all but the most desperate or foolhardy of rogue traders, the Purdus Rift. The Purdus Rift is home to all manner of renegades, pirates and foul Xenos species, many of which are yet to be documented fully by the Magus biologists of the Adeptus Mechanicum. Those that venture out from the Rift generally do so seeking to slaughter, enslave, and plunder with wanton abandon before returning to that cursed area of space. Beyond the Purdus Rift lies Pech, homeworld of KROOT Aviana, designated by the Imperium as KROOT Carnivore, one of the most prominent species to have aligned themselves with the Tau philosophy of the greater good. Pech itself remains in many ways a mystery even to Tau observers who've been regular visitors since the war in the place of Union that occurred towards the end of the Tau's first sphere expansion, and was the foundation of the long-standing alliance between the two species. While it can be questioned how truly dedicated the KROOT are to the philosophical principles of the greater good, they have at least partially eschewed their usual ideology of, if you can't beat 'em, eat 'em, in relation to their melee adverse allies. Pech itself is similar in some ways to Terra, but with a slightly lower gravity, which could indicate a lower planetary mass. The atmosphere is also comparable, consisting primarily of nitrogen and oxygen, with lower concentrations of carbon dioxide and other gases. The amount of water vapor varies greatly across the three main continental land masses. The primary continent has a warm, temperate climate and supports the majority of the planet's species of flora and fauna, and it is the fauna of Pech that are of particular interest. On first inspection, the ecology of Pech appears to be relatively mundane and familiar. Its range of temperate and tropical forest biomes draw easy comparisons to those found in pre- and early industrial ages of Terra itself. However, the dark arboreal habitats of Pech, dominated by the evergreen jagger trees, can be particularly deadly for the unwary or unwelcome. It is within these forests, high in the canopy of the jagger trees, that the KROOT make their home. The KROOT carnivore themselves are just one species of the genus KROOTus, found on Pech, the myriad of which makes up 90% of all vertebrate life indigenous to their homeworld. The root of this evolutionary anomaly can most likely be found in the interaction between the digestive, neural, and reproductive systems in the KROOT themselves. A dissection report carried out by the rogue Magus biologist Charles Darvas of a slain KROOT mercenary is the main source of information and conjecture on the evolutionary origins of the KROOT and their many genetically similar relatives. These include the roughly canine-sized KROOT hound, which can be trained to target specific areas of weakness in the KROOT's foes, predatory pack hunters like the Narlock, which are commonly used as battle mounts by the KROOT warriors, and the powerful ape-like KROOTox that are used as beasts of burden. The KROOT have even been known to goad and herd the massive great Narlock into battle against their enemies. While the stomach of the KROOT is broadly analogous to a human stomach, it is there that the similarities end. The upper intestinal tract connects to a number of nodes called nymes, which are found throughout the body of the KROOT and believed to store and convert nutrients extracted from the KROOT's highly efficient digestive system, and stored in the form of electron-carrying molecules performing similar roles to ATP in humans, and used to provide energy for the KROOT's metabolic processes. The KROOT have a highly developed neural digestive interface, exemplified by a distinct organ that seeks with the digestive tract through neural tissues found in the stomach. This organ incorporates structures described as similar to capillaries, although non-blood carrying, so lymphatic vessels could be a more apt human anatomical analogy. The KROOT possess an 8-chambered vessel, described by Magus Darvas as part of the pulmonary, rather than the circulatory system. This organ appears to be able to simultaneously circulate multiple specific blood types, with a ferroprotein similar to hemoglobin found in blood into the dermis and muscle tissue, while a copper carbonate compound more similar to the hemocyanins found in mollusks is found in the blood supplying the heart. The digestive and renal systems contain yet a further compound that is yet to be formally identified. The atmospheric composition of Pech would support terrestrial life forms having lung structures. However, the respiratory organs of the KROOTus genus are more similar to the gills of fish, relying on a large, moist surface area for diffusion of oxygen. Fish are able to use a surface diffusion method of oxygen uptake due to, in large part, to the higher concentration of oxygen in water compared to air, and the ability to keep water flow over their gill filaments, maintaining an effective concentration gradient. The nodular Nyme zones are also connected not only to the neural tissue found in the stomach, but also ascending to the spine and brain, and descending to the reproductive gamete pouch. These twin tubular connectors appear to consist of neural tissue, similar to that found in the lobes of the brain. The frontal lobe is more developed, and polyp structures are found at the base of the cerebrum vertebra connection, with neural ganglia connecting to the digestive system. The conclusion drawn by Magus Darvas was that this organ formed part of a secondary subconscious brain, with the primary function of coordinating a highly specialized digestive process, and capable of directly affecting the behavior of the KROOT, as well as the development of their gametes. This interaction is hypothesized to be the root of the unusual evolutionary path of the KROOT, and an explanation for the dominance of the KROOTus genus amongst the vertebrates of Pech. As other life forms were consumed, their traits incorporated into the KROOT ancestor species, leading to mass extinction of the majority of non-KROOT vertebrate life forms. The KROOT have the ability not only to extract from their prey the amino acids required to synthesize protein chains using their own DNA sequences, but whole sections of their victim's genome, identifying the regions that code for specific genes and removing them intact to be inserted into their own. This process has similarities to human recombinant DNA technology, where specific genes are isolated and extracted through a process involving restriction enzymes. These bacterial enzymes can cut DNA at specific target sites, allowing the combination of genetic material from both organisms. The KROOT appear to be able to do this process on a mostly subconscious level. The KROOT themselves have a morphology that indicates an avian ancestor, possibly similar to the KROOT hawk, which is revered in KROOT society. Vestigial features such as the hardened and serrated beak-like mouthparts, the light porous composition of the bones, and the presence of quills similar to bird feathers except having a much greater sensory role, particularly those on the head, that contain nerve ganglia that synapse to the frontal cortex of the KROOT's brain. Other features, such as the acuity of their eyes over long distances, would be a more advantageous feature for an avian ancestor than one living in a dense arboreal environment. At some point in its evolutionary history, this ancestor developed the ability to incorporate potentially useful genetic material into its own genome. However, This process was haphazard, with some groups of KROOT, termed kindreds, inheriting unintended genes from their prey with negative evolutionary consequences. It is thought that this is the origin of the many distinct species of the KROOTus genus. Groups of KROOT, known as kindred in KROOT society, lost the measure of sentience necessary to escape from the evolutionary cul-de-sac their feeding habits had taken them down. This could have been the fate of all sentient life on Pech, was it not for the emergence of the Shapers, spiritual leaders with the instinctive ability to recognize both advantageous and detrimental genetic traits and guide their kindred to consume prey that will give the desired characteristics, while avoiding those that lead to evolutionary dead ends by atrophy of their intelligence. Skilled Shapers will direct their kindred in search of particular prey in order to acquire the genetic traits they believe will benefit them. The neural digestion of the KROOT appears to take two distinct forms, the first being the genome alteration of an individual directly through the consumption of tissues selected by a Shaper. These changes can occur relatively quickly, or over the course of the KROOT's lifespan. The second form is slower, and change is enacted over generations, but the physical effects are even more profound. This theory links with the neural connections between the digestive interface organ and the gamete production organs. The morphology of the KROOT give them many features that make them feared hunters, highly skilled at stalking and ambushing their prey. They are dexterous predators with a wiry musculature that belies their outwardly frail appearance. Their muscle tissue consists of dense fibrous spindles that allow them to perform swift, powerful muscle contractions to land blows with surprising force. Hunting in their forest habitat, they are capable of great speed as they leap from tree to tree. The KROOT can communicate with other species by effectively mimicking the sounds of their language, in another comparison which is similar to known avian species. However, the KROOT are also highly empathic, taking cues from the tone and posture of other species to define the meaning of these sounds. This ability even extends to speaking Low Gothic, and is one of the features that allowed them to gain employment as mercenaries across the galaxy. Their own language consists of a series of whistles, clicks, and rasping sounds, possibly combined with rattling of their head quills. It is also believed they'd used pheromone communication, both with each other and with the other members of the KROOTus genus that they use as domestic and war animals. It is even thought that the KROOT's ability to construct their spacefaring war spheres comes from consuming orcs that had crash-landed on Pech sometime in the past dozen millennia. It is believed that alongside inheriting other humanoid characteristics, the KROOT's avian ancestor also gained the genetic ability possessed by their mech boys to intuitively construct functional machines without having the true understanding of how the technology would really work. It is from here that the KROOT are able to expand their search for new genetic traits into the wider galaxy and establish their own small empire of planets around the Purdus Rift. Using their abilities as excellent hunters and trackers, the KROOT now find ample clients for their mercenary talents, allowing them exposure to even more potentially useful genetic traits. And they continue to do so, even if their alignment with the Tau Empire is supposedly exclusive. In his final statement on the KROOT Carnivore, Magus Davos was grateful for the influence of the Tau in restricting the eugenic possibilities of the KROOT, as without their guiding or restraining hand, the possibilities for KROOT evolution is as endless as the stars. I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of the KROOT and the first episode of the Xenology series. If you have, please like, comment and subscribe for the next entry in the series and my other planned Warhammer content. Thank you, and I hope you join me here again in the near future, where there is only war.